training of ASEAN Master Trainers for Food and Beverage Services Division was held from 24th of November to 14th of December 2014 at Diamond Hotel, Manila, Philippines. Funded by AADCP2, the training course was conducted by William Angus Institute, who previously was involved in developing the toolbox and conducting trainings for Housekeeping Division. It is expected that this series of trainings will enhance the realization of Mutual Recognition Arrangement or MRA on tourism professionals by all ASEAN member states.
Welcome to the training of ASEAN Master Trainers. To be an ASEAN Master Trainer, you have to be able to identify the operational context. You need to be able to identify ASEAN Toolbox components. You have to display the characteristics of an ASEAN trainer. And you have to be able to demonstrate that you can implement a training program for a specific ASEAN training competency standard. We will be using lots of class discussions, demonstrations, questionings. You will be using a lot of group work, role plays, and you will not only be acting as participants, but you will also have to put on your trainer's hat and examine why we are training in that particular method and assess whether that method may be suitable for your own trainees.
Chapter 1, Introduction and Element 3, Characterizing the Role of an ASEAN Trainer. Within this chapter, trainees have to identify skills and knowledge of each other.
The way that we've chosen to do that, this program, is to use a drawing activity where the students are required to draw, not write, but draw the responses to 4 questions. The 4 questions are: where do you live? What are your expectations from the program? What is your favourite resting spot? What do you currently do and where do you work? Now, the key thing about this is to draw it.
It was a fantastic idea and it's out of the box opening to get to know people, and we see the other cultures and we can easily understand and identify people. We can get all the informative about their country, so it gives the group the opportunity to understand each and one another.
The next step in Chapter 1 is to address the question of why we are here. What is the outcome for the program and what are the responsibilities of a master trainer and how this will be demonstrated. The assessment tasks are, for a given training competency, they have had to download from the ASEAN site copies of the toolbox. What does this tell us? It tells us that they have visited the website. It tells us they have managed to find where the competency standards are, and they are able to download the training resources which will be used for the training program. Once we had gone through the assessment tasks, it was important that they then understood that their performance is going to be graded. So we went through the criteria associated with the grading of their performance. So there's a level 1 outstanding master trainer, a level 2 a competent master trainer, a level 3 a competent trainer and assessor, and level 4 which is someone who is a trainer but they're not yet competent to deliver or work as a master ASEAN trainer because they may lack some knowledge or their English at this stage is not sufficient for them to be able to conduct a week-long program in English. So English is an important component of this course.
Chapter 2, Element 1, Identifying Operational Context. This chapter describes the development of the Master Trainer Program and related competencies over the past few years.
We were very fortunate in this program to have 2 senior members of the founding groups of the project involved. Pak Putu from Indonesia and Gina from Thailand. We decided that we would use the expertise that they have to provide the participants with the authoritative view of how the process has developed and the various stages within that process. That was very interesting because we had the people who, or the decision makers, who were involved in the process as participants. So they really provided us with true and real information about the development phase.
The information came from any participant is useful for us because they gather any knowledge, any information, any what can build you to become a master trainer or something like drive you to be more trainer.
We also asked the students to use the Master Trainer Assessor Competency Book and the Master Trainer Trainee Guide. So we asked the participants to read a number of pages from the Trainee Guide. Then we asked them to go to the Assessor Manual, and there were 8 questions about the readings that they needed to answer. So they were then required to answer those 8 questions. This meant for the first time that these participants had actually started to use one of the toolboxes. And this toolbox in particular was the toolbox for the Master Trainer and Master Assessor.
I feel very happy on the second day. I like a lot of games in our class. For example, rabbit. I like activity for group. Yeah.
The game that we play is a question answering about the places. It gains information, it gains some materials for us to be more, what we call it, be more active, be more predictive, and then it's useful for us for doing some training in others' country.
Chapter 3, Element 1, Identifying Operational Context. Defining competency-based training and assessment. This chapter provides reasoning behind the competency-based assessment and training.
So we started off the day quite vigorously and energizingly in terms of doing a brainstorm. The idea of the brainstorm was to try and get a lot of information, their existing information of what they knew about competency-based training. So this meant that I could look at their responses and then fill in the gaps. So again, the approach is to use the knowledge that they currently have and just reconfirm that that knowledge that they have is correct.
I think the brainstorm section is very necessary, because if we are from the many countries and start together in the one place, we everyone have ideas. Everyone have ideas. They have to share together to find out the answer.
And it's no wrong, no right. We can share idea from everyone. That's right. I think it's very good.
We then started to discuss in more detail what competencies are. We also spoke about the components of a competency, and we began to realise that competencies aren't a static action. There are dimensions to competencies. So those dimensions of competencies we discussed. We had looked at the overhead. We discussed them from the point of view of a practical work point of view, and we discussed them from more of a competency-based language point of view. We then moved into looking at what competencies they are going to use for their projects at the end of the program.
I take this material, example, 2 boxes. Method to arrange cards and many games and sharing about idea, sharing idea of our participants. I think this the all can take to practice in my country. Very good.
Chapter 4 and 5, Element 2. Identifying ASEAN Toolbox Components.
So in section 4, I think it is, we started the process of developing their understanding of what competency-based training is. There were a number of activities that they were required to do. So in the end, we wanted them to be able to describe what a common ASEAN tourism competency is, and we also wanted them to understand if there were differences between these competencies and some of the language that was used in the workplace. We looked at competency standards in terms of their use within general industry.
Okay, the Asian competency tourism now is about the 10 countries coming together to have a common standard. This common standard is described in 6 different labor divisions. Today we are here for the food and beverage.
A minimum competency standards for tourism professionals, and this standards is based from the agreed competency standards for a required task like housekeeping, front office, food and beverage service, and travel agency.
In day 3, we moved into also looking at what is competent performance. You can have a competency standard, which is a statement which describes the skills and knowledge required to perform a task or action to a defined standard. So we then had to ask the students, well, what is competent performance? It has 5 elements associated to it. It's the task skills, task management, contingency management skills, job role environment skills, and transfer skills. We then moved on and we spoke a little bit about competency-based training and why it is being used really across the world and some of the benefits associated with competency-based training and competency assessment.
When you say competent, so the person has or possesses the knowledge, skills, and attitude required to perform a specific task according to a defined standard.
Yes, this standard will enable us to actually apply across the whole country a more structured approach to training. So we do use a competency standard, but now it aligns back again the 10 country together to have a common competency.
So once we completed that, we then started moving into the new section, which is element 2, identify ASEAN toolbox components. So now we are looking at the parts that make up the ASEAN system. So we know that there are 242 competency standards. We know that those standards have assessment, and we started to introduce them to the learning resources, which we call the toolbox. We also spoke for some period of time about the qualification framework and how that is put together. We moved on from that section about the competency itself, and then we had them working in competency groups. So provide food and beverage service competency, there was about 6, maybe 8 participants who are going to use that competency. So we asked them to to bring their toolbox and identify the 3 manuals that are associated with a toolbox. That information was then dissected. They had to tell us what was inside each of those toolboxes. Again, we put them in the smaller groups, and again we asked them to put the information up on paper in a diagrammatic way such that they could understand all the parts of the toolbox. After we finished this construction, we gave them a new exercise to do. I had developed up a crossword which looked at element number 2. So they had to go back to their trainer manual, the Master Trainer Trainee Manual, and they had to read Chapter 2 or Element 2, and then they had to complete the 20 questions on the crossword puzzle. By giving them the crossword puzzle, we're also suggesting to them this is just another teaching method that they would like to might consider when they conduct their own training.
From a trainer's perspective, I can just see that they're developing more confidence in one another, and I can just see them grasping the process that we're taking them through of a different training and learning process. They're a little bit frightened of the group work. They're a little bit frightened of concept maps, but they're understanding the value in going through the process themselves. They have read some of the training manuals, some of them have used toolboxes before, but I think they're truly understanding how they're working. I think they are having a hard time understanding the different training process. They've come from countries where they've been taught a different method of training and learning, so they're having to almost unlearn what they've learnt. So they've been taken out of their comfort zones, and they're having to face some fears, they're having to be honest and strip back to be students or participants again, and that's difficult. So I think they have struggled with that concept.
Chapter 6. A review of training and learning process. This chapter explains that in every training environment, students will experience different types of learning style.
To emphasize this point, I used an activity written by a man called Kolb. Now, the Kolb activity on experiential learning divides the learners up into 4 quadrants. The students were required to fill in a questionnaire, and then on that questionnaire they then scored themselves, and then they had to plot on what quadrant on Kolb's learning style did they fit. Were they divergent learners? Were they assimilator learners? So we asked them to do that, and then we took them and asked them to sit in different corners of the room.
We learning about Kolb learning style and voluntary learning style. I think that Kolb helped me to teaching my students, because I realized that different people have different style of learning them.
Now, the next phase in this training process is to look at learning as a system. So we wanted the students to be able to identify a number of different steps within the learning and training process. Ozabula is a training exercise where the students pair up. Both of them act as learners and both of them act as trainers. The essential aspects of the Ozabula exercise is that the person has to learn a new coding system. It's something vastly different from what they've looked at before. So as a trainer, you are also a learner. You can't teach anything until you actually understand what it is that you are teaching.
The style of our learning is get more knowledge and more theory, more practical, and more skill. So we have many different kinds of learning styles there. Some are technicians, some are, for the professionals.
The progress of the second week for the participants has been incredible in their development of trust and respect for one another. There's a great difference in language. There's a big gap in their training ability, but the overall ability for each group and participant to share their frustrations and their barriers has been a great progress for them. They are communicating more freely and more openly, and I think they're gaining from one another. I believe the system of working with 2 trainers benefits the participants, no matter how competent they are. The training dynamics requires skills from the trainers to present differently at different times. And a program such as 3 weeks, there are lots of difficulties and challenges that can occur. There can be illnesses, there can be homesickness, there can be issues because the participants don't have the comfort of their own environment. So they may be able to train independently with the skills that they have, but I think to be co-teaching or co-training together is a far easier and more efficient way of training.
Because point of view of the group work, the trainer can combine the delivery method like reading, brainstorming, concept map, and report what is the result. And another point of view related to group work, because when they start to assign the group work, they are mixed member between 8 countries.
Chapter 7. Training as a System. This chapter highlights the importance of daily review for both trainees and trainers.
We emphasise in a lot of training, a student may have a gap of anything up to 168 hours or 7 days before they come back into the training room. So we wanted to see what the effect of time had on the learning process for our trainees. Now, what are the lessons in training from that activity? The lessons are that people will forget over the period of time, and then it becomes necessary to be constantly reinforcing the learning that you previously did. So every day we have a review. The idea of the review is to just refresh the memory of the trainee about where we and what we were doing.
Because when we review again, so make all the trainee try to remember how we are study already, and we can make sure the trainee pay attention in the class also, and especially we can evaluate the output to the trainee. We can we can get the efficiency result also from the trainee. Yes, so that's why we should have the review lesson before we start the new lesson.
We also went over the code system again, and I had a couple of the students actually demonstrate the key learning about each of the codes. So if we can distill information as trainers to something that the trainee already knows about, then we will have more success in being able to transfer that learning to the learner. In this case, the game of noughts and crosses is a code, is a pattern to help with one code, and the other code is the Roman numeral system, which starts with the value of a V equaling 5. In this case, a horizontal line had a value of 5 and a vertical line a value of 1. Again, we emphasise to our trainees that when they are looking at information, they need to be able to process that information in such a way that they can connect with the understanding of the trainees.
I think learning system is very important for training and learning. That's why our trainer need to use system. Now I know this master trainer, they giving to me skill and knowledge, attitude. This is very important for the learner. So next time I will be train that my learner, skill, knowledge, attitude, and very important.
Example, in the one bar, if we don't have the code, so we are difficult to how to understand staff tell to the customer or from staff to staff. So we should have the learning by system. Example for the new code B or new code C by the standard. We spend a little time for the trainer to train in to the trainee. Be easy to understand, yes, and a good standard also, yes.
Chapter 8. Competency-based training process. This chapter demonstrates on how to develop a flowchart, which also gives hints to the next section of the training. Each identified step within the flowchart will be discussed over the following days.
It is about the thing that we need to consider and seek on before we deliver the trainings in the flowchart. It's quite easy because if we know in overall the overview what do we want to do in our trainings, so we can make our process step by step. What need to be set up first until from the beginning until the end.
The next thing we asked them to do was we asked them to become a little bit more intimate with their competency, because in trying to understand what the assessment tasks are of the competency, then the way that a competency is written is that it enables you to go to the unit variable and assessment guide, and then if you read through that area, you come to a heading called Critical Aspects of Assessment. The next thing we did is that we asked them to think about assessment. Now, we used assessment and we had two words. We had the assessment method and we had the assessment instrument. So we wanted to make certain that in the competency there is a heading, suitable assessment methods. The assessment instrument or tool is the actual document that you use to gather the evidence on that a person is capable of doing the competency.
It's very clear what the assessment method we have to use, refer to which element. That means we want to assess them to know about the knowledge, skill, which one that we should apply. Observation, assessment method, or oral question, or written question.
We then moved on because it became obvious that when you look at a competency, there are quite a number of elements, and in one case, I think there's 9 elements in provide food and beverage service, and there are some maybe 30 performance criteria. Now, some people were thinking, do I have to assess every one of those? Then the answer is no, you don't. What you need to do as the trainer, and you need to go to the critical aspects of assessment section, which is in the competency. And you will find inside that, or underneath that heading, in most cases, not more than 4 dot points.
Critical aspect of assessment. So this is that if we want to apply the training methods in our session, it's easy to reach to the objective because we know clearly about the competency standard and we analyze in each element and performance criteria, and then we apply with the method in order to let the trainee can participate, can perform their task, and finally they get competence.
After the students had completed their activities on analysing the competency standard, our next phase was to look at the writing of an objective, a performance-based objective. Now, on the whiteboard, I drew a triangle, and at the top of the triangle, I put the word terminal, and at the base, I put the word enabling. So on one side of the triangle, I also put competency, and I wrote the name of a competency. So I wanted to see the students understood that there is a similarity between the way that a competency is written and a performance-based objective. We asked the students about their knowledge of performance-based objective, and we ended up finding that there was some knowledge of them, and a student was able to tell us that a performance-based objective consists of 3 parts: the performance or the action that is required, the condition under which the work is to be done, and to the standard.
I understand my objective, and to reach my objective, we have performance, we have condition, we have standard.
After we had a discussion on the various training methods, we asked the students to go back into their competency groups, and in their competency groups, what we wanted them to do was to look at the skills and knowledge that they had, the performances that they'd identified, the skill performance or the knowledge performance, and then we asked them to try and match the most suitable teaching method for skill and the most suitable teaching method for knowledge.
We have to read carefully with the competency, read element, read performance criteria in each element, and then we analyze. We have to select or we have to apply which teaching method in each element or performance criteria in order to get, the last stage is the trainee have competence.
Chapter 9. Competency-Based Assessment in Detail. This chapter emphasizes principles that trainers need to follow when doing assessment, which are types of evidence or types of assessment, rules for assessment, and assessment metrics.
The CBA, the competency-based assessment, is a process of identifying practicable current knowledge, skill, and attitude set against all elements of competency within a unit of competency.
Like for the assessment tool, you can go to oral question, you can go to written question, you can go to observation checklist. Further that, we still have like third-party work project as well.
They realised that they couldn't assess the students in everything. So again, we asked them to go back into their competency and look at the assessment, critical aspects of assessment. And with the knowledge of what the critical aspects of assessment are and their analysis of the various ways that they could assess the competency, we then asked them to think of 3 methods by which they could assess the student doing that competency. And in most cases, they all looked at the provision of a practical assessment with the development of a checklist, which they would find in the assessor manual of the competency.
I think about observation checklist, because the observation checklist, you can let your trainee pre-load, they can do everything that they have learned, that they have skill and knowledge. And then you can check everything that they're competent or not yet competent.
For the best assessment for me is practical demonstration is simulate work conditions, because my students come from the children and poor family. Now we teach them practice step by step, one teach one, I think.
Chapter 10, Element 4, Implementing Training of ASEAN Competency Standard. This chapter deals with how to use all the skills and knowledge learned from the training program.
Now, the role of Judy and myself is to go to each of the groups and start to clarify any misunderstandings that the student might have, and we get them to show us what they are doing. So if they're going off track, we can then help them get back on track. So we're working with them, trying to assist them to develop their plan as they go along. They are industry experts, they do know their topic areas, so they have to use the toolbox, and some of them are wanting to use all the toolbox, but that's not necessary for them to do so. So that's what we're doing at this stage today. We believe that by going through this process and doing it once, they learn by experience. So they're going through the process of developing the training plan. So next time they have to write a training plan, this experience will be with them and they'll be able to use that experience. Not only that, but they have a number of resources that will help them develop a training plan. They have the resource of the work booklet, which we have provided for them. They have the resources of the toolbox, assessor guide, trainer guide, and trainee guide. So they have 4 major resources, plus their own experience and the ability to work with someone else who has been through the same experience. So I think there is more than enough preparation there for them to be able to deliver the training and develop a training plan in their own countries, given a need to do so.
We have prepared the training plan, the training program, the session plans, and also the presentation, the actual presentation or the role-playing demonstration. Actually, we have divided the task equally. We've discussed what will be the assigned task for both of us. I've learned in the training program that in order for your learner to be successful or be competent with the skill or the training, so the assessment strategy is being done before the training plan. So now I'm using it, and I think it is more effective.
Well, I think it's not a problem to implement the training method in my country, because all these methods are very useful and helpful to my organization. And these methods are very important because it's easy to understand about we're going to do and we're going to teach. So the students are aware about that.
The exercise we did today was evaluation and feedback. So it gave the participants the opportunity to reflect on their own presentations, improvements, how they would do it differently next time. And that's always a learning. John and I did it every day after class. We'd reflect and do a debrief. This activity worked, that activity worked. So it's constructive criticism of yourself and self-reflection. So that exercise proved an honest communication for the participants this morning. And then we moved on to how they would implement the training program when they go home. So if their ministry said to them on Monday, Master Trainers, you need to now train your trainers in your schools or in your training environment, how would you go about it?
Master Trainer and Master Assessor Program for food production, F&B services and front office is another milestone for preparation of MRA tourism professionals. We are glad that this project has been completed, and I'm happy that I could witness this milestone since my involvement in this initiative since 2002. And this is not the end for the graduates in undertaking their activities. Actually, this is the beginning of their responsibility to carry on what they get from here, Master Trainer and Master Assessor Program, to deliver the same thing in their respective countries. So I hope for this member state can support their activities in their respective countries to ensure that there will be more national trainer and more national assessor for respective country in order to realize implementation of MRA on tourism professional by 2015. I'd like to thank to Australian government, especially AADCP, for supporting this activity, particularly to the team that has provided significant effort for ensuring that this project has been implemented smoothly and successfully. In addition, I'd like to thank to Thailand for hosting food production program in Bangkok, and also to Indonesia for hosting front office program in Bali, and last but not least to the Philippines for hosting F&B services program here in Manila.
Australia's ultimate aim is to support the mobility of, or to facilitate the mobility of tourism professionals throughout the region. We've been working with ASEAN since 2004 in doing this. In the first phase, from 2004 to 2008, we helped develop some common competency standards, standardised tourism curriculum, and regional qualifications framework. From 2008 up until now, we've been working on the more practical implementation part of the work, which has included developing toolboxes. I think we've developed so far 242 training toolboxes in 4 areas of hospitality: housekeeping, food and beverage, front office, and food production. We also have 2 other toolboxes in travel agents and tour operations. So from the toolboxes, we've now moved to the training phase to train the master trainers and master assessors, and that is, that is how our work has progressed over the years since 2004 in this area.
This working group is responsible for the preparation of manpower in order to prepare for the implementation of the MIA. As you know that at the MIA, we need to implement after the ASEAN come to the ASEAN Community, Economic Community AEC at the end of 2015. But in order to prepare of that implementation, it is necessary to prepare the staff, to prepare the people who in charge of the manpower development. On behalf of the chairman of this working group, I would like to congratulate all the trainers who graduate on this program, and I hope that our trainers, when go back to their home country, they will implement the program in individual country. Of course, today's graduate is not finished the job. Will be the starting point for them and also for us, because after they got the knowledge from the teacher, and they need to spread out to the people to know how the standard of ASEAN in tourism professional.
From the first one that we are here, our expectation would be gaining knowledge, but actually we gain knowledge and skill.
Sharing about sharing idea of our participants.
Input that I can learn from the master training course is about toolbox, ASEAN toolbox, or how to be the good trainer.
It's very useful for me. You know, whatever I learn, I have to do the exercise. This is the right way. You know, we have to plan our exercise.
We are comfortable with our trainer, John and Judy, so I'm not having any difficulty at all.
It gets better, and we get to know each participant better. And there's a lot of interaction, engagement, collaboration among us. And there's a lot of group learning. We are learning from each other.
Judy and Jen is very helpful. They're always checking on us on how we do the training plan and the training program.
We learn easily by the activities that we are doing. We are learning at the same time having fun.
So far, I think this is a wonderful journey for me.
It's better for me and not so difficult for me also.
Make me alert, always alert. It's not make me sleepy.
I would like to congratulate all the trainers who graduate on this program.
You truly deserve this kind of a program, and your commitment to your work and your commitment to the job that you're doing right now will help a lot in terms of improving not only the ASEAN but also your respective countries. Congratulations.